You ever have that gut feeling, that deep, gnawing instinct that something ain't right? Yeah, I had it, but I ignored it. Because love makes you blind, makes you stupid, makes you believe in things that aren't there. And me? I was the biggest fool of them all. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for 3 years. We weren't perfect, but we were solid, or so I thought. We'd been talking about having kids for the past year. She was the one who brought it up first. I remember the way she looked at me, those wide, hopeful eyes, telling me how much she wanted a little version of us running around the house. I was on board. I was all in. Trying for a baby became our new routine. Tracking cycles, making schedules. Hell, it almost felt like a job, but I didn't mind. It was for something we both wanted. At least, I thought we both wanted. And then, out of nowhere, Sarah told me she was pregnant. You'd think I'd be over the moon, right? But something was off. The timeline wasn't adding up. We had just started trying. It hadn't even been 2 full months of tracking and planning. But she was already pregnant? Fast, sure. But something about it felt wrong. The dates weren't making sense in my head, but she was beaming, holding up the test like it was the best news in the world. So I smiled. I hugged her. I told her I was happy. But my gut wouldn't shut up. I should have been happy. I should have been celebrating. But something about it gnawed at me. Sarah was glowing, practically bouncing on her feet when she showed me the test, like it was the greatest moment of her life. And I tried to match her energy. I really did. But the math just didn't sit right with me. See, we'd only been seriously trying for a baby for about 2 months. I knew the whole process could move fast for some people, but something about the way she told me, so confident, so immediate, it made my stomach twist. It was like she already knew before she even took the test. I pushed it down, told myself I was being paranoid. But paranoia doesn't come out of nowhere. Over the next few weeks, I tried to be the supportive husband. I went with her to her first doctor's appointment, asked all the right questions, smiled when they confirmed the pregnancy. But I kept coming back to the same thought. Something wasn't right. I started doing the math in my head, over and over. If she was already this far along, that meant she got pregnant before we even officially started trying. And the more I thought about it, the more I started noticing little things. Things I had ignored or brushed off before. Like how, a few months ago, she had suddenly started going out more. She called it girls' nights, but they were more frequent than usual. How she seemed distracted whenever we were together, her phone glued to her hand, quick to turn the screen away from me. How, on some nights, she'd come home later than expected, smelling faintly of a cologne that wasn't mine. I told myself I was being crazy, a jealous, insecure husband. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who assumes the worst about his wife. But then, one night, everything fell apart. Sarah had gone to bed early, leaving her phone charging on the nightstand. It wasn't like me to snoop, I swear. I'd never done it before. But that gut feeling, the one that had been whispering in my ear for weeks, was screaming now. I picked up her phone. It was locked, of course. But when I tapped the screen, a message popped up. Can't stop thinking about you. Wish I was there with you instead of him. My heart nearly stopped. I stared at the message, my hands shaking, my vision blurred with rage, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to be smart about this. I clicked on the message and scrolled up. The sender's name was just an initial T. That didn't tell me much. But the messages? They told me everything. T, I can't wait for us to finally be together. Are you still going to tell him? Sarah, not yet. I need time. He's so excited about the baby. I don't want to ruin everything just yet. T, you know it's mine, right? You're sure? Sarah, 100%. The timing matches up perfectly. He doesn't suspect anything. I felt like I was going to throw up. Not only was she cheating on me, but she was pregnant with another man's baby. And she knew. She knew it wasn't mine, but she was letting me believe otherwise, letting me get excited, letting me make plans for a future that was never real. I sat there, gripping her phone so tight my knuckles turned white. I wanted to wake her up right then and there, scream at her, demand answers. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed to see him. I needed to see this tea for myself. So I kept scrolling. Eventually, I found a picture. It was some guy I didn't recognize, tall, muscular, the kind of guy who looked like he spent half his life in the gym. He wasn't just some random fling. He was someone important to her. And that made it worse. I put her phone back exactly how I found it and left the room, my mind racing. I needed a plan. I needed to figure out what the hell I was going to do. The confrontation. The next morning, I acted normal. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Sitting across from her at breakfast, watching her sip her coffee like nothing was wrong, knowing what I knew. I waited until she left for work before I did what I had to do. I found T on social media, did some digging. It didn't take long to figure out who he was, some guy she worked with. I found his Instagram, scrolled through his posts, and there, buried between gym selfies and motivational quotes, was a picture that made my blood boil. It was him and Sarah. They weren't kissing, but the way they stood together, the way she leaned into him, it was obvious. I wasn't going to play dumb anymore. That night, I confronted her. I waited until she was comfortable, sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a damn care in the world. Then I pulled up the messages on my own phone, the screenshots I took, and dropped it in her lap. She froze. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stared at the screen like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then, finally, she looked up at me. I can explain. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because what was there to explain? Go ahead, I said, crossing my arms. Explain to me how you're carrying another man's baby and letting me think it's mine. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She had nothing. How long? I demanded. How long have you been lying to me? She swallowed hard. A few months. A few months? I repeated, my voice rising. And you weren't going to tell me? Were you just going to let me raise another man's kid? Was that your plan? Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't mean for this to happen. I clenched my fists. Lies. Silence stretched between us. Then she whispered, I was scared. You were scared? I repeated, disbelief dripping from my voice. You should be scared. Because I'm done. I'm so done. She started crying, but I didn't care. Not anymore. I stood up, grabbed my keys. Get your things and get out. Please, just... No, my voice was final. You don't come back from this. We don't come back from this. I walked out before she could say another word. And just like that, my marriage was over. But the worst part? She didn't even try to stop me. I left. I had to. If I stayed in that house another second, I don't know what I would have done. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. Every inch of me was screaming to turn back, to rip into her, to make her feel even half the pain she'd just thrown at me. But I didn't. Instead, I got in my truck and drove. No destination, just the open road, headlights cutting through the dark. I was too wired to think straight, too angry to process it all. So I just kept driving, the rage burning inside me like a wildfire, unchecked and unstoppable. How the hell did this happen? How did I go from being a husband trying for a baby with his wife to this? A fool. A chump. A guy who almost spent the next 18 years raising another man's kid, thinking it was his own. The betrayal was bad enough. But the fact that she was planning to trap me with this baby, that she was willing to let me sign that birth certificate, let me take on that responsibility, all while she knew the truth, that was the part that made my blood boil. I don't know how long I drove, but eventually, my hands stopped shaking. My breathing evened out. And when the anger settled, all that was left was cold, bitter determination. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I wasn't just going to walk away quietly and let her rewrite the story, paint me as the bad guy, or, worse, guilt me into staying because of the baby. No. She wanted to lie. She wanted to cheat. She wanted to destroy everything we built. Then she was going to pay for it. Step 1. Gathering the evidence. I turned my truck around and drove straight back home. When I walked in, she was still on the couch, red-eyed and panicked like she'd been waiting for me to come back. "Where did you go?" she asked softly. I ignored her, walked past her like she wasn't even there. I grabbed my laptop, sat down at the kitchen table, and started working. "What are you doing?" she pressed, her voice trembling. I finally looked at her, my expression blank. "I'm making sure you don't screw me over any more than you already have." Her face crumpled. "I would never." "Save it." I cut her off. "You've already done enough." I pulled up our bank statements, our joint accounts, our shared bills. I went through everything, every expense, every charge. I wanted to know exactly what I was walking away from. I pulled up the messages I had saved, the ones proving she knew the baby wasn't mine. I took screenshots, backed them up, made copies. I wasn't going to let her twist this. And then, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I called a lawyer. Step 2. The legal war. By the next morning, I was sitting in a law office, explaining everything. The lawyer listened, nodding, taking notes. When I was done, he leaned back in his chair. "You're lucky you found out before the baby was born," he said. "If you had signed that birth certificate, things would have been a lot messy, eh?" That hit me like a ton of bricks. I hadn't even thought about that. If I had signed my name on that paper, if I had legally claimed the baby as mine, I would have been on the hook, financially, legally, everything, even after the divorce. I shuddered, realizing just how close I had come to ruining my entire life. "What are my options?" I asked. The lawyer sighed. "You can file for divorce immediately. No waiting period. Given the circumstances, you'll have a strong case for a favorable split." That was all I needed to hear. By the time I got home that afternoon, divorce papers were already in motion. Step 3. The final blow. I walked in, and there she was, still in the house, sitting in the same damn spot on the couch, as if she was frozen in time. She looked up at me, hopeful. "Can we talk?" I tossed the folder onto the coffee table. "Sign it." Her face fell. "What?" "The divorce papers." My voice was cold. "Sign them." Her hands trembled as she reached for the papers. "You're serious?" I folded my arms. "Dead serious." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please, can we just—" "No," I cut her off. "You don't get to beg. You don't get to cry. You did this, Sarah. You chose this. Now you live with it." She flipped through the papers, her breathing uneven. When she got to the part about the finances, she paled. "Wait, you're keeping the house?" I smirked. "Damn right I am." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. See, I had taken a deep look at our financial situation. The house? It was mostly mine, bought with my money, my savings. She had contributed, sure, but not enough to take it from me. And thanks to my lawyer, I had the upper hand. She was leaving. I wasn't. She started sobbing then. Loud, messy, desperate sobs. "Where am I supposed to go?" I shrugged. "Not my problem." She tried to argue, tried to plead, but I was done. Done with the lies, done with the betrayal, done with her. In the end, she had no choice. She signed. The aftermath. A month later, she was gone. I don't know where she went, and I don't care. All I know is that she packed her things, moved out, and left behind the life we built together. Because she destroyed it. As for T, I made sure he knew exactly what kind of woman he was getting. I sent him every message, every screenshot. every lie she had fed me. He never responded. But I did notice that, a few weeks later, she unfollowed him on social media. Guess he didn't want her either. Poetic, isn't it? She threw away a good man for a temporary thrill, and in the end, she wound up with nothing. As for me, I moved on. It wasn't easy. The betrayal still haunts me sometimes. But I wake up every day knowing one thing for certain. I escaped a nightmare. And I'll never let someone play me like that again. I thought I would feel relief when she finally left. When she packed up her things, dragging those heavy suitcases out of my house, leaving behind the life we built, the marriage she torched, the future she spat on. But I didn't feel relief. I felt rage. Not the kind of rage that explodes in the moment, throwing punches, breaking dishes. No, this was something deeper, darker. The kind of anger that settles in your bones, makes your blood run hot every single day. Because even though she was gone, I couldn't undo what she did. I couldn't unsee the messages. I couldn't unhear the lies. I couldn't undo the fact that, for months, she had let me believe I was going to be a father when she already knew the baby wasn't mine. That kind of betrayal changes a man. And I wasn't going to let her walk away like she was just some sad, misunderstood woman who made a mistake. She didn't make a mistake. She made a series of choices. And I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly who she was. Step 1. Tearing down her reputation. Sarah always cared about her image. She was the kind of woman who posted Instagram stories about how much she loved and appreciated me while she was screwing another man behind my back. She played the role of the devoted wife in public while betraying me in private. So I made sure her mask slipped. I didn't go online and rant. I didn't act like a scorned ex-husband, whining for sympathy. No, that's not how you handle snakes. Instead, I let the truth do the work for me. I sent screenshots of her texts with tea to her family, her parents, her siblings, her cousins, everyone who had ever looked at me like I was the lucky one for marrying her. I didn't add any commentary, no emotional paragraphs, just the cold, hard facts. And then I watched as her world crumbled. Her mother, who had always doted on me, treated me like a son, called me in tears. She had no idea. She begged me to forgive Sarah, said she must have had a moment of weakness. A moment? Months of cheating and an entire pregnancy planned around a lie? That wasn't a moment. That was who she was. Her father? A man who had once shaken my hand and told me I was the best thing that ever happened to his daughter? He didn't say a word. Not to me. Not to her. But I found out later he cut her off financially. That was the final nail in her coffin. Sarah had always relied on her parents' money. Even when we were married, they were the ones who helped with her little shopping sprees, her girls' trips, her expensive salon visits. Now, they shut her out. She wasn't just homeless after I kicked her out. She was broke. And as much as I'd love to say I felt bad, that there was some tiny part of me that still cared, there wasn't. She deserved every second of suffering. Step 2. Exposing T. Now, you might think that was enough. That watching Sarah's perfect little world burn to the ground was satisfying enough. But there was still one loose end. T. The man who helped destroy my marriage. He didn't get to just walk away either. See, I did my research. I found out he had a girlfriend. Not just a girlfriend, a fiancée. Yep. Turns out, while he was wrecking my marriage, he had a whole other woman at home, planning a wedding with him. So I did what had to be done. I sent her everything. Every text. Every screenshot. Every lie. Her response? Thank you. That's it. No questions. No disbelief. Just pure, cold acceptance. And then, she went nuclear. She blasted him online, exposing him for the cheating piece of garbage he was. His family saw it. His coworkers saw it. His boss saw it. He lost everything. His relationship, his social life, and, Eventually, his job. Turns out, his company had a morality clause. And when his cheating scandal started spreading through the office like wildfire, his boss decided he wasn't a good representative for their brand. Fired. Just like that. One by one. The people who betrayed me got exactly what they deserved. Step 3. Moving the hell on. You'd think after all that, I'd feel satisfied. Like I had one. But the truth? There is no winning when you've been betrayed like this. There's just surviving. Some days, I wake up and forget it ever happened. Other days, it creeps up on me out of nowhere. A memory, a flash of her face, the sound of her voice telling me she was pregnant while she knew it wasn't mine. It still makes me sick. But you know what helps? Knowing that she lost everything. She tried reaching out once. Called me from a new number after her life completely collapsed. Left a voicemail. Her voice was small, broken, nothing like the woman I used to know. I made a mistake. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry. I miss you. I didn't respond. I just smiled, deleted the message, and went on with my day. Because she wasn't my problem anymore. She never would be again. And I've never felt more free.